Good evening, folks. I call to order the May 18th, 2020 meeting of the Goffstown Select Board. This meeting is being conducted remotely via WebEx, and public access is available via telephone, and there will be more details coming very shortly. I'm going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So I want to talk about first the process and the procedures we're following for tonight's meeting. In accordance with the Governor's Emergency Order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, the Goffstown Select Board will utilize the emergency meeting provisions of RSA 91-A to conduct meetings through electronic means while preserving, to the extent feasible, the public's right to notice of such meetings and ability to observe and listen contemporaneously. Public access meeting by telephone can be made by calling 603-766-5646. Again, that call-in number is 603-766-5646. The participant code for the call is 785-645, followed by the pound sign. Again, that's 785-645, followed by the pound sign. Residents experiencing problems with access during the meeting are asked to call area code 603-384-3624 for assistance with their problems. There's also additional access. You can watch the meeting live on Goffstown Television Channel 22 or on the GTV Facebook page at facebook.com/GoffstownTV. However, you should be aware that Facebook will not be monitored for public participation during the public comment. Residents interested in participating in public comment should call the public telephone access number that was just given prior. So the Town of Goffstown Right to Know meeting checklist. As chair of the Goffstown Select Board, due to the COVID-19 outbreak, in accordance with Governor Sununu's Emergency Order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this board is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to the meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the Governor's Emergency Order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, this is to confirm several things that we are doing. First, A, providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. The town is utilizing the WebEx platform for this electronic meeting. The public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting through dialing the following telephone number. Again, that number is 603-766-5646. And again, the participation code is 785-645, followed by the pound sign. B, providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. The town previously gave notice to the public of how to access the meeting using the available telephone number with the posted agenda. C, providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anybody has a problem with telephone access, please call 603-384-3624 for assistance. D, adjourning the meeting if the public is unable to access the meeting. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting, I will adjourn the meeting and have it rescheduled at that time. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. So we're going to start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When I ask each member, please state your name and affirm that you are the only one present. No one else is present with you in the room. I am Selectman Collis Adams, and there is no one else present with me at this time.
Kelly Boyer, no one else is present with me at this time.
Peter Georgantis, no one else is present with me at this time.
Mark? Mark? Mark, you there?
Yep, I'm here. Sorry, I muted during the American Legion, the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm here. Nobody with me.
Thank you.
I'm Chet Bowen. No one's here in the room with me.
Thank you very much. Okay, the first item of business is a public comment. Derek, is there anyone on the line who wants to make a public comment? Derek?
No one has called in for the meeting to make public comment at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. There will be a second opportunity for public comment later in the meeting. The next item of business is the acceptance and correction of minutes from the May 11th, 2020. There's public and non-public minutes from that
Motion
meeting.
motion to approve the minutes as presented on public and non-public.
Motion by Peter. Do we have a second?
Second,
Second, who was that, Chet? Or Mark?
Kelly.
Second by Mark.
yep,
I'll call the roll. Myself, yes. Kelly?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes,
Mark?
yes, sir.
And Chet?
Yes.
Thank you. The minutes are approved as presented. Next are announcements.
just a second, Collis, just for clarification. Mark, were you at last week's meeting?
Oh,
I thought you
no,
were out
that's right.
last
I
week.
can't take it. Let's back up on that one. I was home.
Okay, so you assume you're
I'll
abstaining.
abstain. I'll abstain my vote. Good catch, Peter. Thank you.
Thank you for that correction. So the motion to accept the minutes passes 4-0-1. Let's see, next were the announcements. Oh, Derek, you had one for me. Now I don't, what did I do with it?
If you'd like, Mr. Chairman, I can read it.
Yeah, would you please, Derek? I'm sorry, I can't pull it up right now.
Okay. The supervisors of the checklist will hold a mandatory session on June 2nd, 2020 from 7 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. This is for the purpose of making corrections to the voter checklist. This is the last date to change party affiliation prior to the New Hampshire state primary in September. Registered voters that are interested in changing party affiliation can do this remotely. Governor Sununu has established a process for voters to change their party affiliation remotely through Emergency Order Number 43. To change party affiliation remotely, registered voters need to complete an application to change party affiliation. This form is available on the town website under 2020 elections. This form is also available through the New Hampshire Secretary of State's website. To change party affiliations, a voter must mail a completed application signed by the voter and a witness to the town clerk. As an alternative, a voter can drop the completed application at the rear entrance of Town Hall in the Town Hall drop box between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. All applications must be received by 5 p.m. on Tuesday, June 2nd, 2020. The town clerk will deliver all forms to the supervisors of the checklist for their mandatory meeting on June 2nd. Any questions about this process? Anyone with questions about this process can contact the town clerk's office at 603-497-8990, extension 811. And again, there is more information on the town's website at www.goffstown.com.
Thank you, Derek. Are there other members of the board who would have announcements they'd like to share?
Collis,
Yes, Mark.
I just got handed a message. It says, "Tell Derek we will meet downstairs." Is that okay, Derek? My wife wanted to make sure if it's all right, we can meet downstairs.
Yes, I will coordinate with the supervisors of the checklist for that June 2nd meeting. We will publish the meeting notice on the town website, as well as the doors, the exterior doors of Town Hall. And again, anyone with questions can contact the town clerk.
Thank you. Thank you, Collis.
Yep, thanks, Mark. Okay, we have a 6:10 appointment. It is 6:10, so we're going to roll right into that appointment. This is an appointment with Andrew Kellar. He's with New England Solar Garden Corporation. This is a discussion relative to payment in lieu of taxes. The acronym for that is PILOT, and this falls under RSA 72:74. This is known as Gentle Slopes Solar Array Project. Derek, do you have a little background before, is Mr. Keller, I assume, here, right?
Yes, he is on the line. I will give you a little bit of background on this. At the April 28th meeting of the Goffstown Planning Board, the Planning Board approved a site plan for the solar array at this location. For those who may not be familiar with the site, this is on the west side of Route 114 as you enter Goffstown from Bedford, basically on the left, underneath where the power lines cross 114. And it is just south of Hebert's auto yard there. So about 14 years ago, the state adopted some changes to state law that allows for these payment in lieu of taxes, these pilot agreements for renewable generation facilities. And you'll find in your packet, there is a one-page explanation document provided by Mr. Keller and New England Solar Garden. There's also a copy of RSA 72:73 and :74. And then there is also a one-page letter from the Goffstown assessor that speaks to his recommendation on this project. I would like to turn it, though, over to Mr. Keller so he can explain the project and what they're requesting.
Thank you, Derek. Welcome, Mr. Keller. How are you this evening?
I'm great. Thanks for including me on your meeting this evening.
Certainly. So the floor is yours. If you'd like to give us a little background and some more detail on the project, that would be great.
Absolutely. So we started this project about a year and a half ago now, I'd say about. We were fortunate enough to spend time with the prior landowner who unfortunately has now passed. He was a great gentleman that had some great vision for this property. I know over the years there was different iterations of what could be done out there. I know that he continued to do his part by not putting in current use. I know that was something that he said specifically to me before his passing, that he could have, he chose not to. He wanted to see the best use of that land for the community. And unfortunately, there was a lot of starts and stops, I guess, out there. There's a lot of stories that I've heard over the years. But when solar became an option for him, it was a little bit of a legacy, I think, to him. He knew at the time he was sick. He knew that he was going to be passing soon. He has a young son who's in college and a late wife that he's left behind. And I think he really wanted to do something unique with the land. So we kind of took that upon ourselves. Personally, I took that upon myself to do whatever we could to make this project a reality. It has not been an easy project. That site is not an easy site. I know probably some of you folks know even more than I do about that site, but we've been fortunate enough to work hard to get through the process. The town's been fantastic to work with at the local planning and kind of zoning level. So we appreciate all the hard work that everybody's done at that level. We always hold our breath with the utility. Eversource is challenging to work with some days when it comes to getting solar projects approved. We've also dealt with kind of the ups and downs of policy and the ever-changing policy in our state, which is still in flux. So we had to adjust the project based on some of the changes that occurred while we were in development. Currently, we're working this project under the current state law, which allows for 1 megawatt projects per parcel of land. And there's multiple parcels. There was a process we went through to make sure we had 2 separate parcels of land. So all those steps have taken place. There's a lot of other kind of sausage making that goes on in these projects I won't bore you with, but we do work to move a lot of these things in parallel with each other. As we get to what I would consider the finish line of the permitting process, we like to engage the town in this pilot discussion. Some communities, we prefer to do it earlier on, but respecting the town's wishes, we want to make sure we actually had a project. We now have a project. We are in the construction planning phase with the intention of building this project this fall. And with the pandemic, things have slowed a little bit, but we're still moving forward. So Derek was good enough to get us on the agenda, so we could request that the board has a public meeting so we can answer any questions for the public, and then enter into the pilot agreement if that's the wish of the board and the town. To kind of put a bookend on our analysis, we are always working with a financial analysis that's ever changing because the process changes, the cost change when, we wait for Eversource to give us the cost to do the upgrades. All those things are happening in real time. One of the components is, well, two of the key components is the land lease with the land owner and the pilot with the town. We have a finite amount of money available between those two kind of expense line items. So the lease had been signed. We had to have the lease signed before we could start any work. And then now we're at the pilot stage. So we're always striving for a certain return that the underwriters need to review and continue to sign off as the project moves down the path. So what I shared with the assessor was an example of our pro forma, so we could understand how the money moves and how the expenses impact the project. And I think we've landed at a good place where he understands how it works, what the assumptions are that we use before the projects get built. So again, this evening, just here to answer any specific questions that the board might have. Again, requesting the board to move us to a public hearing in the near future. We are kind of racing to get in through the construction planning phase. So this is kind of one of the last check boxes we have. So with that, I can answer any specific questions about the information I shared or anything about the project.
Well, thank you for that. Before we get started, somebody's got feedback. Before we take that step, just want to let folks know that this will be going to a public hearing on June 8th, I believe it is. So there'll be opportunity for public input specifically at that time. But for now, Derek, could you just explain for the folks who might be watching what payment in lieu of taxes is all about, or PILOT as the acronym is known, and some of the specific details as it relates to this project?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So rather than assess again, this is a program that's allowed under state law that was adopted in 2006. This has further been modified, but the state allows for payment in lieu of taxes for renewable generation facilities. So a solar array such as this, if you were to assess it and charge taxes based on the land and the improvements, they would not be financially viable. They just simply would not be able to work and they would not get built. So the state legislature allows that a town, after public hearing, can enter into a payment in lieu of taxes rather than charge them rather than assessing their property and charging their taxes based on the tax rate and their assessment. You predetermine what that payment will be, and it can be up to 5 years, or if the owner has requirements that it needs to be financially viable to get the project off the ground, it can go longer than 5 years. So this is really kind of a negotiation between the developer that's trying to bring it in, as well as the town. A facility such as this has lower tax impact than other uses. There obviously would be no impact to our school system, and then the other services provided to the town are much less than other developments that would go in. So that's kind of why the legislature put in this ability to do a pilot with them.
Thanks for that background, Derek. So again, I just want to ask if there's members of the board who have questions of either Derek relative to the logistic of this, or Mr. Keller relative to the projects itself. Are there board members who have questions, comments?
Collis, I have a comment.
Okay, yep, Peter, please go ahead.
I served on the planning board on this, and this went through a lot of scrutiny, numerous meetings. And I also want to make sure everybody knows that this board is next to Bedford, and actually we had the people from Bedford in for public comment, and the contractor General Slopes decided that to make some arrangements to make sure that the Bedford residents were covered too. So they worked really hard with us and with Bedford folks to make sure that there was no damage or anything that would affect their properties.
So where are they in the planning board process, Peter?
We're all done. We're
All done? Okay. Great. Other board members have questions or comments?
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes, Kelly.
Thank you. I'm noticing on the recommendation from the town assessor that they're offering a 25-year agreement. And Derek, I was just wondering if you had any history on the length of that agreement and the price per year. Is that standard for pilot agreement?
I'd ask for maybe Andrew could speak a little bit on the length of the term.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Kelly, for the question. So typically, as Derek had stated, they can start as a minimum of 5 years. The idea behind that was if it was a smaller investment from a project perspective, and it follows the life of the actual project. These solar projects do amortize themselves over typically 20 to 25 years. The state program in New Hampshire for these projects are until 2040 right now. So we like to give ourselves a little bit of leeway between when the program is going to end and when the project is going to be completed with, it's kind of the amortization schedule. So that's the reason behind the length of time related to this project and related to New Hampshire. As far as other pilot rates around the state, again, we do a lot of projects with other towns, either the town being the actual landlord that we're leasing land from, or the entity that's buying the power. Always, as you obviously can imagine, the pilot agreement discussion is always with the town as a taxing entity. So we've done this, these probably a couple dozen different pilot agreements we have around the state of New Hampshire. You're getting the benefit of about 7 years of this. You're not the first town that we've done this with, so we've got quite a bit of experience. And the rate of our pilots range from about $2,000 per megawatt all the way up to about $4,000 per megawatt. And this one is coming in right around, I think the numbers that the assessor worked on was right around $3,500 per megawatt. The reason why one might be a little bit higher or lower than the other, we have land projects we do on landfills, which are more expensive to build, more expensive to permit. So they can't support a very high land lease as well as a pilot. That's kind of back to what I said earlier about having those two different items in our budget. So they can move around a little bit. We have had some towns where the town was the landowner and obviously the taxing entity, and we were able to bring the pilot up a little bit higher and lower the land lease a little bit because they were the same entity and taxation was an appropriate concern in their town. So they wanted, the optics of the project was supporting taxation versus the lease rate. So there's a range there. There's also this project specifics that can dictate why a lease or a pilot can support only so much, because Eversource, any of the costs that Eversource charges for the project, we have to pay for it. Whereas sometimes if you're doing a traditional development, some of those costs might be borne by Eversource. So we try to balance the best of the costs that we know, the costs that we'll learn as we go through the process, and make sure we match that up with the lease and the pilot the best we possibly can. So I believe I did share some references, and if the board would like to see them, I'm happy to share that list of other towns that we've worked with around the state of New Hampshire and what those rates were. So you don't have to go dig in for this information, which is again the public purview. So if that's a request, Kelly, you'd like to see, I'd be happy to share that information.
Thank you.
Follow up, Kelly?
Nope, that's good. Thanks.
I have a question.
Okay, Peter?
Okay, on the assessor's letter, it says in the first paragraph or so that they're offering a 25-year agreement at $6,925. And down at 4, it sounds like he's saying we should counter it with 9,000. Am I understanding that right, or am I misunderstanding what he's saying?
Yes, he did some analysis based on the numbers that were provided in the pro forma. His ultimate recommendation is that the board approve a pilot agreement in the range of $7,500 to $10,000 per year. And then when he again was able to plug in some numbers in that pro forma that was provided to us to maintain the investor's requirement on this project, then he said it could go up to 9,000, but again, that doesn't account for some of the unknowns.
Thank you, Derek.
So Is that, Derek, is that based on 25 years?
Yes.
So if you wanted this, is there an advantage to dragging it out to 25 versus 20? To the town or to the developer? Who would the advantage go to?
I think if we change the term of the agreement with the project developer, that would change the financing on it. I think again, because of their experience and their expertise dealing with this throughout the state, we kind of allowed them to propose what would work for them to make the project work and bring that forward to you. But if you wanted to change the term, I think we would probably lean on the applicant and then also reach out to some other resources to see how that would affect the project viability.
The applicants offered to get information from other. I would be interested to know how many other of the programs are out 25 years, or if they've done them at lesser years.
Do you have that information available, Derek, or?
Andrew, can you speak to that? Oh, hold on, you're muted.
I wasn't sure if that was my background noise. So the 20 to 25 year range is kind of interchangeable. You know, if the difference between 20 and 25 doesn't have a huge impact on the numbers from the financial perspective. Again, we try to match up between 20 and 25 because, like I shared, the program in New Hampshire goes through 2040. So, and this opportunity for that to potentially change in this with some requests that are being made to the legislators as we speak. So I was trying to be as conservative as possible with the time frame. As far as the list of other towns and rates, like I shared, I'm happy to show what those are. You know, I can tell you, towns around your area. Franklin, for example, has a pilot rate at $3,500 per megawatt. And I just want to make one, so I should make one thing clear. In the recommendation from the assessor, he's basing that $7,000 number based on 2 megawatts of projects. So that's where I'm getting back to that $3,500 per megawatt number. So Franklin has been at $3,500. Laconia, we were at $2,800. That was a landfill project. The town of Pittsfield, we were at $3,500. Tamworth, we were at $3,500. So again, I'm happy to share all these specific towns and rates. Again, they're, like I said, they're in the public for everybody to see. So I'm happy to share those and represent what those exact numbers are. So you don't have to go, chasing down their numbers in their meeting minutes.
My question is the term, how long the other towns have done in terms. And the second thing was, you just mentioned again for the second time, this program is only through 2040. Well, this is 2020. Why wouldn't we just do a 20-year?
And we could. Again, the most of all of them have been actually 20 years. We've started to try to align our lease terms, which are 25 years, with our pilots, just for consistency. That's why I shared. If 20 years was more comfortable for the board, again, no problem keeping it at 20 years. I don't see any impact to what we propose and where we could land on a rate and a term.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. And anything else, Peter? You still have the floor.
No, I'm good.
Okay, I want to move over to Mark. Mark, do you have any questions for Andrew?
Nope. The only thing I was concerned with is it ends in 20 years, which is 2040. I mean, I don't think we need to look any further than where we're going to go and try to rein the numbers into where it needs to be.
Okay, thank you. Chet, do you have any questions for Andrew?
I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from any of the board members? Derek, any last comments?
No, again, the purpose of tonight's meeting was to bring the concept forward to the board. Andrew has been in touch with planning staff and myself here at Town Hall. It was my preference that this go through the planning board process and at least get conditional site plan review before coming forward to the board to discuss a pilot. I didn't want the two issues getting confused, but now that they're done with planning board, the request is, I guess, if you concur with the concept of the pilot, would be to schedule public hearing on June 8th so that the public could be heard on the matter. And at that point, you could iron out the final terms.
Yeah, we'll take a motion on that in just a minute.
Question?
Andrew, any further comments you want to make before we move to a motion?
No, I just appreciate the board's time and questions, and appreciate Derek's hard work and the assessor's work just to help get us here. So yeah, looking forward to continuing the process with you guys.
Okay, great. Thank you for joining us this evening. It was helpful, very helpful.
Derek, I have another question, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Peter.
My question would be to Collis. Collis, do we have to have, before we go to public hearing, do we have to have some kind of sense of what terms we're looking for and the amount before we go to public hearing, or is that going to be determined after we take input from the public?
I think we need to go, and Derek, I think the process is we'll go to public hearing first, take comment from the public in case we need to modify this based upon the comments we receive at public comment.
I'm looking at the RSA right now just to make sure. That was my understanding that, let me see.
It seems to me if you go into public comment, you'd be going to the public comment with some kind of a plan.
Well, we want to make sure,
Type of thing.
we get public comment before us, before we take any further action. So it seems like that's the next logical step to me.
I agree, Collis, that before we take an action to approve anything, but I would think when you go to public comment, they would want to hear the details as far as the years and the dollars involved. And I don't think we can take public comment and then make the decision, because then the public doesn't get a chance to discuss the dollars or the length after the public hearing.
Well, I think Mr. Keller's hearing the issues of concern as we're discussing it now. I hope you do a little further research so when we do go to the public comment on June 8th, he can address those.
Yeah, thank Mr. Chair. My experience in the other ones we've gone through, the discussion on a night like tonight was to get the board comfortable with the term and the rate, and then bring that to the public to make comments on. And typically at the end of that public meeting, there would usually be a motion to vote on and sign the pilot at that meeting, so we wouldn't have to go into a third meeting. That's the norm. Doesn't mean that's what we have to do, but I just share that as experience.
So I think the main concern I've heard, Andrew, is relative to the term, and that it seems to me the consensus of the board is they're more comfortable with a 20-year term.
Which I'm perfectly fine with.
Okay, great.
So Collis, do you want a motion that goes ahead with the pilot program to a public hearing?
Yes,
20 years at 9,000 a year? Is that what we're looking for? Which I believe is the range is 75 to 10, and he recommended 9.
Yeah, I think that those details ought to be part of the motion.
Okay, I'll make that motion then.
Thank you, Peter.
I'll second it.
Second by Chet. Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, I'll take the roll call. I vote yes. Kelly?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Chet?
Yes.
I missed somebody. Peter? Peter made the motion. Okay,
But yes, I'm in favor of it.
okay, thank you. So the motion passes 5-0-0, so we'll be scheduling this for a public hearing.
Great.
Anything else we need, Derek, at this point?
No, I think I've got the clear, and then any questions, I'll get the references from Andrew in the meantime to provide you those, so you can look at that. And then I will schedule that public hearing for June 8th.
Terrific. Thank you very much.
Great.
And again, thank you, Mr. Keller, for being present with us tonight. And I look forward to seeing you at the public hearing.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Thanks, you too.
Bye.
Okay, Derek, let's move on to the town administrator's report, please.
Thank you. At tab 6A, you have starts out with your consent agenda. It looks like I've got them in the wrong order there, but the first one is your consent agenda. You have a police department special officer resignation, and then you have 2 sidebars for CBAs. This was to allow us to implement the first responders COVID-19 stipend program that was approved at last week's meeting. This is with the Goffstown Patrolmen and the professional firefighters of Goffstown.
To entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
Make a
Motion
motion
to
to approve the
approve.
consent agenda as presented.
I'll second it.
I got a motion by Chet, a second by Peter. Any discussion on the motion? I'll take the roll. I vote yes. Kelly? Kelly?
Yes.
Thank you, Peter.
Yes,
Mark?
Yes.
And Chet?
Yes.
Thank you. The consent agenda passes 500.
At the next page, you have your committee meeting schedule for the next 3 weeks. On Wednesday of this week at 6:30 PM, the library trustees have a meeting. I believe that's Vice Chair Boyer. Also on Wednesday at 7 PM, you have the Parks and Rec Commission
Yep,
meeting.
I have that covered.
And then next week at 6:30 PM on Wednesday is the Historic District Commission.
Yep.
At 7 PM is the Conservation Commission on Wednesday of next week.
I have that covered.
And then Thursday at 7 PM next week is the Planning Board.
yes,
And then the following week, there is an error. Monday is not Memorial Day. That'll be Monday, June 1st. But on Wednesday at 6:30 PM, Economic Development Council.
I'll be there.
And then on Thursday, the 4th at 7 PM is CIP's first meeting.
I'll be there.
Kelly, I didn't hear you on the library meeting. You okay with that? You got that covered?
Yep, I'll be there.
Thank you.
The next item is a request from the town clerk for the reappointment of Deputy Town Clerk Karen Leclerc. This would be for a term expiring March 31st, 2021.
motion to appoint Karen Leclerc as the deputy tax clerk for the term expiring March 31st, 2021.
Thank you. Motion by Peter. I have a second, please.
Second.
That's second by Mark.
Yep.
Any discussion on the motion? I'll call the roll. I vote yes. Kelly?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes,
Mark?
Yes.
And Chet?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously 500.
At tab 6D in your packet is more information about the Governor's Office for Emergency Relief and Recovery, the municipal relief funds. This was discussed at your meeting last week. Again, the governor designated $40 million with $32 million going to municipalities for COVID-19 related expenses incurred between March 1st of 2020 and August 31st of 2020. This request is to request that the board do a motion to accept and expend the CARES Act funds up to the allocation of $423,304.
motion to accept and expend the CARES Act funds up to and allocated of $423,304 for the Governor's Office for Emergency Relief and Recovery. Municipal relief funds.
Thank you. Motion made by Peter, a second.
Second.
Second by Kelly. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call the roll. I vote yes. Kelly?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes,
Mark?
Yes, sir.
And Chet?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously 500.
Thank you. And the final item I have in the town administrator's report was just a 2020 budget update. Along with the paper packets, as well as those emailed out, you have copies of the general fund expenditure reports, report and revenue report for the month of April 2020. I did want to point out a handful of items on the expenditure side. Operationally, to date, we've overexpended approximately $56,000. These are we're working with the finance office and the fire chief to submit those for CARES Act reimbursement. through the multiple different grant programs and funding programs that are out there. Right now, departments anticipate additional costs as we're preparing for reopening. Here at Town Hall, we're currently constructing physical barriers at the customer service windows, as well as PPE supplies throughout town. And then also on expenditures, personnel costs are approximately an additional $20,000 to date. Most of this has come out of the full-time and part-time wage lines, which were budgeted. And some of those will be reimbursable through CARES Act fundings. Any employees that have used the 2 weeks of COVID sick leave will be reimbursable through CARES Act funding, as well as some of the additional time and overtime from the fire departments. But that's really on the expenditure side. We do have some departments on. We can answer any questions that you might have.
So just to sort of encapsulate that, so both the 56,000 more or less and the 20,000 are going to be fully reimbursable, so there'll be no fiscal or no impact to the taxpayers?
I'm not certain they'll be fully reimbursable because the FEMA reimbursement is at a 75-25 with a 25% local match. So if we're forced to use that funding to reimburse those operational costs, the town would be responsible for 25%. But again, many, whether it's through the DOJ grant or the Gopher Municipal Relief Funds, some items may be 100% reimbursable. So we are working to try and get it through the 100% reimbursable as allowed.
So if there was a 25% match, that would be made how?
That would be made out of the 2020 appropriation, whether we might have to shift some funds around and bring budget transfers or budget adjustments back to the board for approval at a future date.
Okay, so let me open that up, this one, the expenditures portion up to the board for questions and comments. Questions and comments on the expenditures portion?
I have a question.
Yes, Peter?
Why aren't those funds attached to the 423,000 we just voted on to accept?
Because there are limitations that have been placed on it by the CARES Act fund, as well as the Governor's Office for Emergency Relief and Recovery, the Gopher. They have put some limitations on what is reimbursable through those funds.
And so what you're telling me is the over expenditures, none of that qualifies under those funds.
No, I'm saying that most of those will qualify under one of the programs. And maybe the fire chief can, I know he and Danielle have been very in-depth with it, but it's my understanding a lot of the PPE costs are being driven towards the FEMA grant, which is the 75% and 25%, whereas some of the other costs might be reimbursable under the Gopher funds or the DOJ grant.
Questions from other board members on relative to the expenditure?
Wait a minute, I'm not done yet, Carlos.
Well, there's a long pause. I thought you were.
No, I was waiting for Danielle or the fire chief to step in, but that's fine. So those funds that they're expended are absolutely not reimbursable under the 423,000. It's not that we got the 423,000, but there's a potential to get more by going in a different direction. Danielle?
Sure.
Chief, anybody?
So the thing is, there are multiple grants and funding opportunities that overlap with what's allowed. PPE is one that is covered by multiple streams. However, each of them have set their own boundaries as to which one must be applied to first. So for the most part, the funding that you see, the 55,000, a lot of those are supplies and PPE, which we've been instructed we have to submit through certain grants first. So as of right now, to date, we have submitted the PPE supplies through 2 different grant revenues, the DOJ as well as the AFG, which is the FEMA Assistance to Firefighters grant. If we are unsuccessful with those 2 grants, then we would turn to submit the funds to the FEMA Public Assistance Grant, which is the 75-25 match. Gopher has set a rule that the 423,000 you were just talking about, they have set a rule that if we send the funds to them or send a request for fund reimbursement, we have to show that it was first rejected by the FEMA Public Assistance. So that is why we are, submitting it through multiple avenues at this point in time. And then if it is not reimbursed through one of those, we will then turn to the next available funding stream.
So that said, if I just understood what you said, that should have no impact on our budget.
We are expecting the majority of it will be covered.
All right, thank you.
And I apologize, Peter, and other board members. I don't mean to cut you off, but one of the unfortunate parts of these remote meetings is I can't get a sense of body language and whether or not people are done talking or they still want to
How
continue.
about if I do this? How about something like this?
So I apologize. I don't mean to cut anybody off. It's just, it's a little difficult.
That's okay.
Other members of the board, questions? None? Okay, let's go to the revenue side.
The revenue side is a little bit more complicated, and that one is tough because the CARES Act and all the funding that's been put out, that's come down from the federal government to date, has said that it will not replace lost revenue. So right now, the 2020 general fund budget was offset by an estimated $6,361,833 in estimated revenues. Town clerk revenues, which includes DMV, boats, and dog license, is about 3.2 million of that 6.3. It makes up almost 51% of our revenues. DMV revenue is on track when you look at the April budget. If you look at it, it's right at about 25%. Unfortunately, we were doing much better in January and February. So the rate of collection that we've seen since the emergency orders have come down and the governor has extended 20-day plates out from February all the way till the end of May, our revenues are down significantly. If the monthly trend continues like we saw in April, we could be as high as $575,000 in shortfall. I don't think it will be that bad because, again, we have not captured those new vehicles that were purchased from February through today because the governor has extended those 20-day plates. However, that is the biggest pot, I guess that is the biggest revenue that the town sees in one area. So it's definitely an area of concern. Also, state revenues make up about 25% of our revenues. That is meals and room disbursement. That is highway block grant. And that is also the municipal aid that was voted on by the state as part of their 2-year budget. We have not gotten any direction from the state on what to anticipate with those. But again, because it's meals and rooms, which is directly based on the collection from restaurants and hotels, and the highway funds, which are impacted by the gas tax, we do anticipate that there is a likelihood that there could be a shortfall there as well. And then finally would be all other revenue, which makes up the other 25%. In that, we have property tax interest. That would be directly tied to any interest waiver if the board wants to pursue that at any point. It also includes solid waste tipping revenue, which are directly related to collections at the transfer station. And as you recall, back in March, the proposal was brought forward to not collect revenue from residents, and that has been the case since then. So if you look at those revenues in the April report, they are down significantly.
So Derek, I know you're in fairly regular contact with the governor's office. Have they given any indication as to when we might be getting more specific guidance on some of these revenue streams like DMV, meals tax, those sorts of things?
They have not. I think what we have seen is their focus has a lot been getting the CARES Act money out there and developing the programs. And they've been very busy with that, as well as the reopening task force. I know that the New Hampshire Municipal Association has been in constant discussion with the governor's office about the importance of those revenues and, knowing about those. But we haven't. We can reach out to the New Hampshire Municipal Association again, or our state reps and state senator to see if there's any guidance. But so far, we have not seen any guidance on what we can anticipate in those shared revenues from the state.
Yeah, it's a little uncomfortable position to be in, but I'm not sure what we can do since the guidance is coming directly from the governor's office. But is that it, or is
Just-
one more with the solid waste?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, who's that, Peter?
Yeah.
Yep, go ahead, Peter.
Derek, has there been any discussion with department heads on the spending freeze until we get some better hold on what we have coming?
So the department heads met a couple of weeks ago, and we made an agreement that CIP purchases for vehicles we would hold off on at this point. Again, the police department did bring forward to you the bid for the state bid for firearm and shotgun and rifle replacement a few weeks ago. There is currently a bid package that is out there for the Parks and Rec screening trees. And the only other, active CIP purchase that's going on is the road and, the use of reclamation funds for the road portion that DPW has done. But to date, vehicles have not been purchased. We have not gone out for bid on those. Those would come to the board for approval, as well as any other CIP expenditures.
Okay, my concern is more with the, and I'm going to use this as an analogy, but the pens and pencils, paper, things like that, just the regular everyday expenses, are we keeping our eye on that?
Every department is being cognizant of what they're purchasing. Speaking for my department only, we're having to shift quite a bit of resources as we prepare for reopening to the public, as we purchase those additional PPE, as we start to construct those physical barriers between staff and the public, and hand sanitizing station, those things. So we are spending on those where we didn't plan to before, but we're trying to be thoughtful with our use of legal counsel or some of those other areas where we typically can save a little bit of money when we need to. And I know other department heads have made direction to their staff as well.
So Derek, I know there's been some anxiety of the public about the road plan. Are we moving forward with road work and moving that forward?
Hey, everybody. Sorry,
Hey.
I'll apologize if you can hear a baby in the background.
Thank you.
2020 problems. So just to speak to the budget piece before the road plan discussion, DPW does look to, even with solid waste revenues being down, right now the annual revenue for solid waste programmed in anyway was $120,000. Right now we're sitting about 30,000 below where we were at the end of May in 2019. So if we were to continue waiving fees for the rest of the year, that would put us at another 90,000 total. So I think that would probably be inadvisable as we kind of work towards credit card acceptance over there, and maybe even prior to that getting online. Might want to shift the model at the transfer station. I know it's been pretty fair game so far this year. So that's kind of the ceiling at DPW would be about a $90,000 shortfall on solid waste revenues if we were to go the whole year. But on the flip side, on our operating budget, we've got a handful of lines that are under expended by a fair amount, about $60,000 between overtime expenses, diesel fuel, highway full-time wages. We've got the hiring freeze right now. So We've been gapping a few positions. So we've got about $60,000 on the other side of expenses to kind of balance off that revenue shortfall. And that'll be continuing here for a bit as well. Road plan wise, we are making moves. So we've spent part of the spring getting some of the roads that are getting the overlays ready. We are right now waiting on the paving contractor. They tell us that we are behind Hampton. I haven't been able to get some information from Hampton yet about where they sit, but apparently that's where we sit in queue. I think we're up near the top, but we still have another town in front of us. So it could be another week or two before we start to see Continental rolling into town to prep for those. But right now, unless I hear otherwise, plan is continue forward here. We'll start charging on the in-house work when we return from Essential Only with the plan to June 1st. And that'd be Shirley Hill and then Warren Ave shortly thereafter to get those both going. But otherwise, we're tracking there. Other subcontracted work, the bridge project substantially complete, as we talked about, I think, at the last meeting. The signal project is wrapped up. I don't believe I did talk to you about that yet being done. Line striping is still waiting when they can get some consistent nights over 40 degrees, so we can get them in. They prefer right now to be doing that night painting. And then we've got the street sweeping project is done as well. Roadside mower, I haven't received any invoices yet, but I think he's making moves to get started as well.
So the line striping sounds like this week. Sounds like we're going
I think we're close. Yeah, we're down, I think, 39 tomorrow night, but after that, it's going to warm right up pretty quick. So we're hopeful we can get them in before long at all.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes, Kelly.
Thank you. Adam, do you have any anticipated date for us to reinstate the fees at the transfer station?
I do not. I don't know if it makes sense once we are shifted back to away from a rotating personnel at the scale house, where we have our regular full-time scale weighmaster that can accept fees. That probably makes sense. So I don't know if June 1st, if you don't want to wait until your next meeting, which I guess would be after the 1st, we could always, you could give me that direction tonight, and we could get those back going. It's gonna, I've been told by finance, it's gonna take a little bit longer to get credit card acceptance going. We've got a few hardware issues at the scale house and connectivity. We have to get together with IT. They've looked at it, but we haven't quite got the necessary fiber line to the scale house building, which would then turn around and enable a consistent internet access there that would then allow us to get a credit card machine there.
So personally, I'd like to see those transfer station fees back in place as soon as possible. There's a lot of stuff moving through that place.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that starting June,
Peter,
Mr.
go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion that effective June 1st, we go back to charging at the transfer station.
And I'll second Peter's motion.
Okay, I got a motion by Peter and a second by Mark. Is there any discussion on the motion? The motion is to reinstitute the fees effective June 1st. Any
Can I
discussion?
ask a follow-up question to my
Certainly.
question? Thank you. Adam, knowing that the credit card reader won't be installed by the June 1st proposed date, do we have the necessary gloves and hand sanitizer and things like that available for the weigh station to collect money? Or can we make sure that that's, I know we have it in town, but does DPW have it?
Yeah, that needs
We
to be.
do, and as Derek mentioned, part of the task right now is to kind of stock up PPE and otherwise. We do have a fair amount of sanitizer and Virex, that type of stuff that we've been dedicating to the solid waste operation primarily right now anyway. But
Great.
absolutely, that'd be the prime focus right now with the public facing nature. They're gonna have everything that we have for sure.
Great.
Yeah, I'm assuming we do some sort of training with the scale house operators or something on the protections regarding that. But I'd appreciate, I know you're a stickler for that kind of stuff, but I'd appreciate that being implemented as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. I vote yes. Kelly?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes,
Mark?
Yes.
And Chet?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously, 5-0-0. Adam, you all set with that?
Thank you.
Clear direction? Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. The staff will be very happy. Thank you.
Okay, whoops, I lost my place here. Where are we at, Derek? Just while I try and scoot down through here.
I think that was it for the expenditures and revenues, or unless, again, to answer any questions that the board might have at this time.
I do
Anything
have
else?
I have a question, Derek.
Yes,
Going
Peter.
going forward into the CIP, which is next week, what has the CIP looked like? Kelly, maybe you know. If we're going to cut stuff out of this year's CIP projects, how are we going to handle that?
Well, CIP hasn't met yet to discuss that process. I'm not sure if anything was put forward by the planning board, but I have not heard of any process adjustments as of yet.
Well, I don't think that'd be up to the planning board or the CIP committee what gets given to them. If we're going to cut something, say it's a dump truck, a cruiser, or whatever, that would have to be reinserted into the next year's CIP. Derek, are you catching what I'm saying?
Yes, if the board made a decision to delay one of the purchases that was in the 2020 appropriation, department would have to shift everything. I think that all department heads are aware of that. We have had some discussion as department heads as to the approach to CIP. It's, again, CIP is a planning tool that departments use to talk about the needs of their department and bring it to the planning board. And that is a process that will go through the end of August, and any adjustments that the board makes before then can shift that entire matrix. So I think we are aware of that, and department heads will take that into account. And as has happened in some years past, I know it happened when Megan was at DPW and recycling revenue did an absolute flip, and she had to start taking purchases out of as late as October or November. I think we're all aware of that, and we will keep that in mind as we go forward with DPW with the CIP process.
Thank you.
Can I also say we said as a board we were going to look at CIP before the CIP process really started. Derek, do you have any update on where the department heads are with their CIP submissions?
Yes, I know the CIP submissions are currently being done by department heads. I did make a slight adjustment to your goals under fiscal management is my sense that the board wanted to kind of get into that long range planning of replacement and significant maintenance of capital assets, but not necessarily approve the CIP before it went to the CIP committee. CIP is, a planning function of the planning board that is tied into the impact fees. So it was my intention to continue moving forward with that, to again feed that information back to the board. And I guess if the board wanted to give the board's rep some specific direction, then you could do that. But we weren't, as department heads, we have just been given the kind of the green light to start submitting, and the planning office will be getting all that together. And then CIP first meets on June 4th. So I know there was some discussion about bringing it forward to this board for approval. It just gets a little bit complicated, whereas CIP is a planning tool, and then you typically see them as when it comes forward for budget approval. So I kind of want to keep those processes distinct so that the planning and the needs of the department weren't, I guess, impacted as much by the budgeting decisions that typically happen in the fall.
Thank you, Derek. Anybody else want to chime in on the CIP process that we're talking about right now? This is just preliminary, obviously. We're in the early stages. No? Okay. Thank you, Derek. Derek, in future agendas, could you just put department head updates on as a regular agenda item, just so we can touch base with each of the department heads real quick?
Yes, absolutely. I can do that. I do know that both the fire chief and police chief are on, if you had any questions for them, as well as the DPW director, but I will add that to future agendas.
Thank you. Chief Allard, do you have any updates relative to fire or EOC?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we're continuing, from the EOC side, we're continuing to monitor kind of the latest situations locally as well as statewide. Our main focus has been, as the town administrator said, working with the finance director on grants. That's kind of been consuming quite a bit of our time with regards to EOC management, getting those funding opportunities back to the town. For fire department operations, our status quo, handling the emergencies as they come about. And then to touch on the budget question from Selectman Georgiantis earlier, we're certainly paying attention to spending. And if it's not essential, everything's kind of frozen right now internally here at the fire department.
Thank you. Any questions for board members or for the chief? About, let's see. Chief Marino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So for as far as the police department is concerned, we are changing a little bit of our operation. Everybody's healthy, which is good, and we're been staying healthy, but we've noticed throughout the state and specifically our town, we're seeing a little bit of an increase in some of the motor vehicle type offenses. So our officers are going to take a little bit of a different approach and conduct a little bit more of a enforcement action. We've seen through the state some statistics that are kind of staggering, is that from last year to this year, they've seen 166% increase in traffic fatalities with less traffic on the road. So we're experiencing it across the state. So you're going to see some officers out there with PPE masks on, as well as some eyeglasses if they have them available when they're stopping the cars. But basically, you're going to start seeing that enforcement back out there a little bit more on the main roads. But other than that, we're status quo. And to speak on the budget, same thing here. We're just trying to get what the essentials are, and a lot of our other line items are kind of just being frozen right now until we see where we're going to be at the end of the hopefully the summer here, and see where we're at. So that's where we're at right now. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Any
Can I
questions?
ask Chief Serino a question?
Please.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Chief, have you been asked, or have you had to enforce any of the COVID rules as far as gatherings and things like that?
So we've been specifically told about one specific business that was allegedly operating just recently, right before the reopening of the businesses, which approach we've been slowly trying to use the AG's guidance by, educating people rather than enforcement. But as far as us enforcing gatherings, we have not been told about, or anybody's really came to us and said, there's 15 people at Barnard Park. Can you kick them out of here? We've had a couple of things. I think I spoke to the board previously about a few people that were on the parks, the equipment that we've kind of talked to the people and said, listen, this is closed. This is to help decrease the spread of this, and we're putting yourself at risk, and can you please leave? And so far, we've been pretty lucky with compliance on that. The rail trail issue is we've had a couple complaints of people saying they're not social distancing on the rail trail. But again, like I've kind of said in the past, that, we're not on the rail trail enforcing social distancing with people that are in their families walking their dogs, and who knows if they're really family members or not. And we're kind of playing that by ear. But as far as large gatherings, Selectman Georgiannis, no, we haven't had anything major.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Chief.
You're welcome.
DPW Director, we've already heard from you. You got any last items you want to bring up? Adam?
I think I'm all good if you're all good.
Yeah, I'm good.
Thank you. Oh, actually, maybe I do. The one thing I didn't get brought up earlier on the CIP freeze, The one thing that we had that was fairly major was the bridge project that I mentioned. Remember, that was a 2020 project. The signal project was 2019, but the bridge was a 2020 that you had authorized just because we didn't want to be stuck with a red listed or a closed or downrated bridge down the road.
Thanks, Adam. About Parks and Rec Director Wilhelmie. Rick, are you with us?
Rick is not. I know that talking with Rick, they are closely monitoring the guidance that's coming out of the state about summer camps as well as public pools. I know he and Mike have been working very hard on maintaining the fields and also the new field and working with DPW on that. But I'll talk to Rick and he can have an update for you at your next meeting.
Thank you. How about Library Director Hathaway? Is Diane with us tonight?
No, she is not.
Derek, how about Town Hall Administration?
Yes, so we are preparing to reopen to the public. I haven't run my plan by the fire chief or some of my staff here at Town Hall, so I wouldn't want to talk too much about specifics about it yet. However, we are currently constructing physical barriers, plexiglass barriers, to go between our customer service counters and the public. We are going to continue to encourage use of online and mail when it can be used. Again, we've been very fortunate that staff has remained healthy throughout, but we understand that being closed to the public has put a burden on some of our public and some of the transactions that they would like to do. So we are aware of that, and we'll be looking to make changes, with a soft target June 1st, similar to what DPW is doing.
Thank you. Okay, anything
So-
else? Go ahead.
Just
Pete.
one question, just a question for Derek. So Derek, I was doing some checking and I went online on like MUR website, which shows everybody who's closed, and we're the only town listed that's actually closed. Do you know of other towns and what they're doing?
Yeah, the feedback that we've seen on the municipal manager's website varies. There are some towns that still have some offices that are open for public. I know that New Boston town clerk does have open window hours. I know that some others as well, or they're doing by appointments. But there are also quite a few communities throughout that are completely closed and are only taking transactions through mail or online. So it's a mix of both. I think the reason that you still see that Goffstown is closed on MUR is Catherine has been very dedicated to updating that because it only lets you go three days into the future. So she kind of tasks herself with doing that on a regular basis, whereas other towns might not do that, even though they are closed to the public.
And it's your anticipation it's going to take 2 more weeks before you can get the barriers up with people trained?
Yes. We have all the PPE in. It looks like that we will need. We do have hand sanitizing stations that we'll be putting out for the public as well as employees. We need to get some signage completed. The barriers are not yet complete or installed, and then we would need to train employees and figure out any changes to operations.
And
Just to
signage
let-
would include spacing.
It would be, yes, spacing and queuing outside of those public-facing offices, as well as signage requesting people to do a self-check of their symptoms before entering the building and following basically the CDC guidelines that are available.
So pretty standard stuff.
I think Collis and the rest of the crew, I think after the questions about when's the road's gonna start working, Town Hall is probably the second most question that I get, when we're gonna open Town Hall, so the sooner the better, so we don't have to, so we can take better care of the citizens of the town.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think you get any dispute on that. Anything else? The next item on the agenda is new business. Does anybody have any new business items they want to bring before the board? Hearing none, I'm going to move on to old business. This is a big one. This is the 2020 Select Board goals. Derek's done a great job of trying to move this thing forward. I think it's come to a place where I think we need to take action on it, and I'd like to take action on it tonight. There's been ample opportunity to provide input on these goals. Again, so I'd entertain a motion to adopt these goals if one of the members of the board would like to make that motion.
I'll make
I'll
that
make that
motion.
motion. Or I'll second it, either way.
We're going to give that one to Chet. Chet made the motion to
I'll
accept
second it then.
the goals as presented, and a second by Peter. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Can I just ask,
Sure, Kelly.
maybe not necessarily to the adoption of the goals themselves, but will we also be constituting a practice for reviewing and completing these goals, or the process for which they'll be documented, or kind of what the next steps are?
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying, Kelly, and I agree. It's one thing to adopt goals. It's how do we track them to make sure that they don't go stagnant and nothing
Right.
gets done relative to them. So Derek, is there some way you can set up a tracking mechanism to brief the board on the progress on each of the goals?
I think if the board members, we could do something similar to the action matrix, where we do, rather than every meeting, maybe every other meeting, where we provide an update. I will be providing, I can, and then I guess working with department heads to see if anything needs to be assigned out to specific department heads or specific committees. I know we do have some items that kind of involve some of the volunteer committees. So it'd be one, assigning those to either board members, committees, or staff, and then providing a monthly update. I think we can continue to move those forward.
Yeah, that'd be very helpful, Derek. Thank you. Any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call the roll. I vote yes. Kelly?
Yeah.
Peter?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
And Chet?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously 5-0-0. And lastly, we have the action matrix. Let's see, gotta get down to that. Anything on the action matrix? Let's see, we've got. Changes to personnel plan and communication strategy. Yeah, we're gonna roll that into the select board goals. I think we've done that, have we not?
You have, and then now we will start working with those people identified in the select board goals to start moving some proposed changes forward.
Okay, thank you. And that brings us down to grants. So the DOJ grant.
Maybe I know that both Danielle and the fire chief have been in touch with the Department of Justice, and there have been multiple changes on that grant, but maybe one of them could speak to that.
Danielle or Chief?
Sure. Yes, we did submit the grant initially, and the grant was submitted for $152,000 originally. That was revised by DOJ, and then we sent a revision at their request, which was again revised. So we had another phone conversation with the grant manager up at DOJ this morning, and the chief and I went through all of the lines again, item by item, and added additional expenses that have been incurred since our original submission in April, and have sent that forward to them. This time it was about $44,000. So we are waiting for their answer as to if all of the items we've submitted are going to be accepted and reimbursed. But that is where we stand as of today's submission.
Any idea when we might get a response from them, Danielle?
They seem to be pretty quick, a week or less, I would expect. And they did immediately notify us once they received it today that they got the updated one and they would be submitting it back to the committee for review. So we'll let you know as soon as we hear from them.
Great. Thank you. Anything else to add? Chief?
Nope, the finance director did a great job.
Good, great, thank you. The vehicles, let's see, we got a police car going back to Ford for some repairs. And DPW has a six-wheel dump that's scheduled to be returned back to us, 15th.
And I will say that Director Jacobs did reach out to me today and said that number 363 was delayed at Donovan for a bit. And then he also has truck number 371 is going to New Hampshire Peterbilt for some exhaust gas recirculating pipe replacement, whatever that means.
Okay. All right, we do have some non-public, but anything else that come before the board during the public portion of our meeting?
Mr. Chairman, I will just say that there is no one on the telephone
Thank you.
for the second portion of public comment.
Thank you, Derek. Appreciate that. Okay, anything else? If seeing nothing else, I'll entertain a motion for non-public.
Motion to go into non-public under RSA 91-A:32, hiring.
Thank you. Motion made by Peter and a second by
I'll hire that. I'll do the seconding.
Mark. I'll take the roll. I vote yes. Kelly,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
and Chet.
Yes.
So motion to go into non-public is unanimous 5-0-0. Want to thank the folks who are watching on GTV. This wraps up the public portion of the meeting. We are now going to go into non-public. Thank you for participating. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay sane. We'll get through this. Thank you all. Good evening.